right?
Well,
or that was the foxhole one.
That was the foxhole one.
All right, welcome out there, everybody. This is Amateur Radio Roundtable. This show is about ham radio. I'm Tom, W5KUB, and today is December the 8th, 2020. So first, I'd like to welcome anyone out there that's listening on shortwave on International Shortwave Station WBCQ on 7490 kilohertz. This is about ham radio. And you might find it interesting. A lot of us started off being shortwave listeners, so I'm sure you might have some interest. Send us an email to tom@w5kub.com, tom@w5kub.com. Let us know where in the world you are and how you're hearing the station, and if you have any questions, shoot them to us. And if you have internet access, you can always watch this show live and participate in the chat room. We're on every Tuesday night at 0200 UTC. That's Wednesday, 0200 UTC. And locally here, that would be 9 p.m. Eastern Time if you're in the U.S. So we'd love to have you there. Let's see what's going on. Several things happening. We got our balloon launch today. We had to put it on hold yesterday. The clouds didn't look too good yesterday, although within an hour the sun was out. But we learned by experience. You don't fly an expensive balloon through a cloud because it will pick up moisture and it comes down in pieces and you have to start over. Anyway, we got W5KUB-22 launch today. It's somewhere right about now, as the show is starting, that balloon is probably making it close to the east coast of North Carolina, I'm thinking. When we wake up tomorrow, we should be a good ways across the Atlantic, I'm hoping. Maybe Bill can give us more information on that a little later. Let's see. Want to talk to you a little tonight about EME, Earth, Moon, Earth. And we're going to try, as a show project, we're going to try to bounce a signal off the moon. I'll tell you a little bit more about this. I threw this together this weekend. Look at that. You might not know what that is. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. We'll talk a little about what this is in a few minutes. And we'll talk a little about that. We'll get some updates on the balloon, and we've got Alan with us here on Tech Tips, and he always has something great to share with us. We got Bill with us. We've got Glenn with us, and let's see. Well, let me see. We had Alan with us. Let me add Alan again. It looks like Alan is connecting again. There he is. There he is. So let's see what's going on with Alan there. Alan, how you?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Real quick. So I'm back.
Yeah, we lost you. I said I said you always have something neat to share with us, and then you were gone, man.
I was gone. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I minimized the Zoom window, and then I couldn't get it back up again. I had to close it and start over.
Yeah, I have the same problem sometimes. I minimize Zoom, and I can't figure out how to get it back on, and.
I was all tabbing. I was doing all this stuff. It was gone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, what are you going to talk about tonight? Tell everybody what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, make it simple so they'll all understand.
I try to make it simple. So anyway, hey, everybody, it's Alan, W2AW, and tonight on Tech Tips, we're going to talk about something that sounds complicated, but it's not. Time domain reflectometry. And basically, it's a way of measuring the length of your coax electrically. or even like a distance default in your coax electrically. I've done some videos of this, but I'm going to show you a super simple way. If you've got nothing more than a storage scope, like a digital storage scope, a digitizing oscilloscope, like a lot of hams have these days, you can actually make these measurements on your coax without even having to build a circuit. So it should be fun.
All right. Well, that sounds interesting. Now, what do you call that? Something optometry?
It's time domain reflectometry. What we're going to do is
reflectometry. Okay.
coax and measure the time for the reflection to come back off the other end, and it's super simple to do.
Okay.
All right, we'll get into a little bit of the theory about why it works, and then we'll
okay. Well, great. Well, let's check in with. Let's go to Bill next. Hey, Bill, how you doing, man? Bill,
I'm doing great. I've been following your balloon today, and working great.
Well,
crossed my state to spend most of the day crossing Alabama to my south, but I could see it every transmission on my receive station here on Whisper. It looks very stable.
Well, I sent Martin Jew a note. It looked like he was going right over Starkville, and I wanted Martin to go out and see if he could see it, but I didn't hear back from Martin. All right, we'll talk a little about balloons a little later, and also something else maybe that you're working with. You're working with NASA and some kids, right?
Right.
Yeah, maybe we'll mention that and let everybody know kind of what you're doing there, and we'll talk a little about the balloon and maybe what to expect and where it might be tomorrow and those kind of things. All right, let's jump over to Glenn. Glenn, how you doing, Glenn?
Hanging in there, man. Getting real close to finishing up on the book.
Yeah, well, you know, you've been getting close for a couple weeks now.
I'm getting real close now. I wanted to build one more project here, which is basically a handheld RIDI decoder that would display RIDI on a TFT display.
Yeah. Oh, hey, and I still need to get you those pictures and that stuff. I hope I'm not too late. I'll try tomorrow to get that stuff to you.
Now, not too late yet. I mean, it's looking. I'm probably going to have this project put together by the end of the weekend, and then we're going to start looking to wrap things up.
All right. Well, I'll
get those. Last 10% of the job, it's taking the last 90% of the time.
Well, at this stage of the game, it kind of grows arms and legs because you're trying to find all the little pieces to wrap up, and you say, "Oh crud, there's 4 more pieces I forgot over here." And, oh, I need this schematic, and I need that picture, and you just. Like I say, it just grows arms and legs, and you just have to start grabbing a machete and chopping them.
So does this book have a name, or are you allowed to tell us what it might be, or do you know what it's going to be?
See, what was the name the official name? Something like...
I saw, it was called Underwater Basket Weaving by...
Yeah.
Now, does it have an official name?
Yeah, the official name is Arduino for Ham Radio Part 3.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that makes sense.
So, like I say, we're really in the last little wrap-up stage. Like I say, I call it the RIDI Reader, has been one of those I dreaded because I'm like, can I really pull this off? Because I have to decode the RIDI audio, and that's at 45 baud, and the world has gone ASCII. Nobody does baudo anymore, and nobody does 45 baud anymore, other than the software programs like Ham Radio Deluxe and stuff like that.
Well, you talked about this slow speed stuff, Dan, and bauds like when I was growing up and when I started in the Air Force and that kind of thing. But let me tell you something, Glenn. I'm using a transmitter right now to track this balloon, and guess how many baud it is?
Probably about 0.01.
I forget, but I tell you, I think it's like 4 baud or something. Maybe Bill can look it up, or maybe he knows. It's very, very small. I mean, it's less than 10.
Right. But the other thing...
We still talk about baud in high-speed serial communications. We just don't use baudo codes, but we still talk about baud rate.
See, ASCII is an 8-bit code to handle all the characters, and baudo is only 5 bits.
Right.
They don't have... baudo has got they don't have a shift key in baudo. They have a figures and a letters key that actually forces the upshift and downshift, and it's just sent as a regular character.
Well, let me ask something, man. Since we're talking about what I'm an expert in 50 years ago in the Air Force, you know how to test a 5-level teletype? You know what characters you use?
Oh gosh, figures and letters.
No, use RY. RY.
Oh yeah.
Because R holds 2 and 4, and Y is 1, 3, and 5. So look at that.
Yeah,
Two.
but
Yeah.
if you do the figures
And then you do the
letters,
shift. You can do the shift too. Yeah, yeah.
if you do the figures and letters on an old Model 15 or something like that, the rattling and the bouncing that it makes of shifting that carriage up and down, it's like you're bouncing a bowling ball on the floor.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I never
twice a
had
second.
to work on, and I wasn't sent to school on the old Model 15s and 14s. Although I have owned one back about then and had it, as a personal teletype many years ago. And I moved up to better and newer. You know, the Model 28s, the ASRs, the KSRs, and so forth. Even Kleinschmidt. What were you gonna say, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, we at the Ohio State Radio Club back years ago, we had a Model 15, and we sent computer art by the tech to create, just from the letters, you can create different shades.
Yeah.
And we sent all kinds of images that way by teletype. It was
Well, you
great.
know, it's probably not politically correct, and our show would probably put off the air if I mention this. But yeah, you're exactly right. And we would print out pages, maybe 3 foot tall, and it would be like the centerfold out of a Playboy or something. You know, that's the kind of pictures you'd print with dots and X's and L's and O's and brackets. It would come out. It would look like a person sitting on a stool or whatever. So that's kind of cool.
And that was all stored on paper tape that you feed through.
Well, and the paper tape, you wound it up in your hand in a figure 8, the way we were learned, and that way you can hang it on a wall. When you get ready to send that picture or whatever, you take that tape down and stick it in the reader, and stick it in the reader.
Those
and turn
of us
it on
that had a Model 28 or a Model 15 with the paper tape reader punch, I mean, we were kings of the RIDI world.
Oh yeah, and now look at us now, man. We do RIDI on a computer screen.
Yeah,
isn't that cool? No
and it's
grease.
all done in software decoding and everything. It's
no
grease.
I'm going back to hardware. We don't get grease on everything, and it's quiet. Man.
Oh yeah.
There have been improvements over the years.
Well, like I say, I'm doing this in hardware just because, and. I found a little UART module for the Arduino. Thing has got zero documentation, and I managed to figure that out. And that's half the fun of doing my books, is getting into things that nobody else has played with, nobody understands yet, and deciphering them and making them usable for everybody. And that's kind of what I've done here with this one, is that UART is perfect for doing things like RIDI and any other data mode that you want to put together, because the Arduino, you have to use that software serial, and that doesn't always work better. I'm a hardware person.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, look, let's get going here. We got 2 or 3 things I think are going to be interesting to talk about tonight, and no telling where this will go. And Glenn, when we start talking about EME, I want to talk about JT65B. And I did see, thanks, Bill, and I did see in the setup where you click for VHF or UHF, and it selects A, B, or C on the JT65.
Hey, Tom?
Yeah.
Just to let you know, on our Zoom screen, I don't see what you're outgoing on the stream. All I see is a screen with the HP
well, you
on
know
it.
what? I think I can probably fix that real quick.
There you go. Yeah, now I see it.
Now you see it. Okay. I'm sorry. I had to restart the program a while ago. It got a bug in it, and when I restarted it, I forgot to turn the virtual camera back on to you guys. All right. Well, very good. Well, y'all missed a lot. Do we need to go back and start over?
Oh no, I could hear fine, and I think everybody in the stream, it was working fine. It was just
okay.
us, I couldn't see it. That's all.
I got you. Okay. Well, look, let's. Why don't we jump right into the tech tip segment tonight, and let's get this thing rolling, and see what we can learn here.
All righty. Well, you're going to have to give me permission to share again.
Yeah.
So anyway, good evening, everybody. And again, we're going to talk about time domain reflectometry. And I'll get a little bit into the theory of it, but it's really actually pretty simple to understand. And then show you how, if you have a digital scope like so many people have these days, how you can actually do this yourself to measure, how much coax is left on the spool, or where the break is in the cable that's running up your tower, or something like that. So let me do a quick little share of a PDF file here, and y'all should be able to see that. So when we send a signal down a piece of coax, right? And I'm going to do it with a little step voltage change here, but it really could be RF, it could be anything else. But the step voltage helps me kind of illustrate it here. If we put a step voltage change in the input of coax, that doesn't instantaneously arrive at the other end, right? There's a propagation delay that the signal doesn't get there instantaneously, right? Everything is kind of limited by the speed of light, in free space. But then in coax, it's further limited, essentially by the dielectric constant of the coax. But we characterize that by a parameter called the velocity factor of the coax. And for most of the coax that we use, the velocity factor is usually between about 66% and 80%, depending on the coax that we use. Okay. And so what that means is that if the velocity factor is 66%, that means that the speed of the signal going down through the coax is going to be 66% of the speed of light. The speed of light can be expressed a number of different ways. I find it convenient when we talk about TDR, or time domain reflectometry, to think about how far we travel per nanosecond. Okay, and it's just about a foot per nanosecond, 11.8 inches in free space is what you would get if you were able to visually see your signal, say, leaving an antenna, for example. It's running at about a foot per nanosecond. Okay. If you've got a velocity factor of your coax of 66%, that means that the speed of the signal going down through the coax is about 7.78 or 7.8 inches per nanosecond. Okay, is about how far it will go. So by knowing that, we can actually use that to our advantage to actually calculate a line length if we can figure out how long it took the signal to get through the coax. Okay. So we take that one step further here. If we look at the coax, the coax can be thought of as essentially it's a transmission line, right? But at the end of the day, it's really just a wire, a coaxial wire. So a single conductor surrounded by, a shield around it. So the conductor itself has got some inductance, and we call it incremental inductance. Okay, so for every unit length, there's a certain amount of inductance. You double the length, double the inductance, triple the length, triple the inductance. So think about the inductance as being distributed across the length of the line. Okay, and also because that center conductor is surrounded by another conductor, you essentially got two conductors surrounded by an insulator, or separated by an insulator. That defines a capacitor, right? That's a capacitor. So again, for every incremental length of coax, there's a certain amount of capacitance between the two lines, between the center line and the shield. So you have this distributed inductance, serially along the line, and distributed capacitance effectively in parallel with the line all the way across. Okay, so what that does is it sets up this signal wavefront. Let's say if we instantaneously turn on a signal, go from 0 to, say, 2 volts or something like that, or 0 to 1 volt at the input, you're going to get this wavefront of a voltage change and a current change that propagates down that line. And essentially that voltage change is causing current to get essentially pushed through the inductor and charge up effectively the incremental capacitance until you eventually reach the end and everything settles out, the line is completely charged, and the current reaches a steady state. But you have this kind of surge wavefront that goes through. And that small change in voltage and small change in current, that wavefront, the ratio of that current to the voltage is essentially the characteristic impedance of the transmission line. So you have this for most of the lines that we use, a 50 ohm relationship between the voltage and current during that wavefront as it's propagating down the line. So that's kind of what gives rise to what used to be called the surge impedance of coax, but we just call it the characteristic impedance of coax. Whether it's 75 ohm or 50 ohm, it really is all due to that ratio of the voltage and current of the wavefront as a wave is transmitting or propagating down that line. Okay, so that's kind of what gives rise to essentially that delay and the impedance of the line. So let's say if we launch a signal in from a step generator here, looking up at the top, it goes from say 0 to 2 volts. And we launch it out of a signal generator that has got a 50 ohm output impedance, okay, like a transmitter, for example. Okay, and we launch into a line that looks like a 50 ohm transmission line. If that line was, say, infinitely long, from the signal standpoint, it looks like a 50 ohm resistor to ground. Okay, so as far as that signal's concerned, if we had 2 volts applied at the left-hand end of that 50 ohm resistor written in black, we're going to have a 1 volt step appearing at the input of the line because it's just a simple voltage divider between our series 50 ohm and the 50 ohm of the coax. So we've got essentially a 1 volt step there. You get that voltage divider effect. So that 1 volt step propagates it all the way down to the line, down the end of the line. If that line is terminated in a load that matches the impedance of the line, then that step is absorbed, and then we'll wind up, in our case, with a 1 volt signal sitting here at the load. And that makes sense because if the load's 50 ohms, and we have a source impedance of 50 ohms, we again have that, 50% voltage divider. So we've reached a steady state and no reflection. Now let's say we've got a condition where we don't have a load, we've got an open at the far end. What happens is initially when that 2 volt signal gets applied, through that 50 ohm resistor into the coax, we're still going to get just a 1 volt step because the coax at that instant looks like a 50 ohm resistor. That 1 volt step propagates all the way down the line. When it reaches the end, since it doesn't see the 50 ohm resistor, that surge current that's going through basically causes the voltage to essentially get reflected back. It's kind of like hitting a hard wall, like bouncing a signal off, bouncing a ball off a wall. It hits that wall and bounces back. So you get this return that starts at that 1 volt and then increases by that same amplitude. So it goes up to the full 2 volts and propagates all the way back down to the line until it gets back to the end. And when it gets to the end, essentially both sides of that 50 ohm resistor written in black now are going to be at 2 volts, which means there's no current flowing, which is exactly what you'd expect. Right? If you applied a 2 volt signal, 2 volts DC to the input of the coax through a 50 ohm resistor and the coax was open, when everything settles out, you'll have no current flow because there's no DC path to ground. Okay, so this is exactly the principle that we can use to measure the length of coax, okay, or measure the distance to a fault. And this is exactly what a TDR, or time domain reflectometer, does. It applies a step and measures this delay for how long it takes the signal to go to the end and reflect back. Okay, so this is what we can do. It's a really super simple thing. I did a video on doing a TDR, and I used a simple little fast pulse generator, but we don't even have to do that. So if we set up like a digital scope, a storage scope to capture a triggered event, we take our unknown length of coax, I leave it open at the far end, and then we have just a simple little T, like a BNC T. Okay, connect one end of it to directly to the high impedance input of the scope, the other end of it to the coax, and at the far end, connect up just a little adapter or whatever to put a 50 ohm resistor, and then simply connect it up momentarily to a 9 volt battery. Okay, and set the scope to a quick little single shot, or what's called either a normal trigger or a single trigger event. You can do either one. And then on the scope, what you'll see, if you set up your trigger level to trigger just above ground, so as soon as you connect up that 9 volt, you'll see that rising edge. What you're going to see is essentially initially that voltage divider effect between the 50 ohm resistor and the 50 ohm coax. So it's going to rise essentially to half the battery voltage. And then that step is going to propagate down the line, hit the open, reflect back, and then add up again at the T, and you'll get a second rise on the waveform. And that delay between those two rises is essentially the round trip delay through the coax. So if we know the propagation delay, or how fast the signal travels through the coax, and we know what that round trip delay is, we can actually compute the length in inches or feet or whatever it might be. And the formula is right down here. We're essentially going to measure that time delay from the first step to the second step, multiply that by the velocity factor. Okay, in this case, I'm using coax that's 66% velocity factor, multiplied by that 11.8 inches per nanosecond. Okay, so that tells me essentially how far I've gone and back. All right, but because it's a round trip delay, the actual distance is half of that. So we multiply it by a half, and that would give me the length of the line in inches. And then we can divide by 12 again to get to the length in feet. So that's really as simple as it is. Let me stop sharing here for a moment. And what I'll do is show you the little setup here. Super simple. Okay. There's your BNCT right there. Okay. So what we're going to do is hook this free end of the BNCT ultimately to our unknown length of coax. We're going to hook this end right to the input of the scope. And at the other end here, I've got just a little BNC to flying lead adapter here. And on one end of the flying lead adapter, I'll just connect it to, say, the negative side of a 9-volt battery. And the other one here, you might not be able to see it on camera, I've got a little 50 ohm resistor, actually a 47 ohm resistor, but that's close enough. And what we'll do is just literally momentarily connect this to the positive side of the battery, and that'll cause the scope to trigger and capture our waveforms. So let me switch over and share the scope screen here. And while that's coming up here, I got to go over and connect this up to our scope. Now that's connected up to the scope here. And can you guys still hear me okay? Because I got to kind of shout from where the scope is to where my computer is.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So without connecting up the coax, if I just, let me see if I can do this without everything disconnecting on me here. Without connecting up the coax to this here, let's first just take a look at what this looks like on the scope. If I connect up this guy here, get my resistor around here, and if I do this carefully, okay, there's that step change going from, say basically ground to my 9-volt battery, and this is actually a pretty dead battery, so it's only about 7.5 volts. So I've got this set up to, if I go to my trigger mode here, I've got it set up to what's called a normal trigger. Normal trigger means the scope's not going to show you anything until it gets a triggered event. Okay. So this can, and because I'm touching this with my finger, sometimes it'll bounce and I'll see some of that. So you just got to do this a couple times so you get a nice clean one like that. Okay. That just shows what your step should look like without any coax connected up. Okay. If I go and connect up my unknown length of coax here, and now do the same thing, now you can see I've got a step change. Okay, let's come back down here. You can actually see there's the initial step. It went up about half as high as soon as I connected that 50 ohm resistor, right? Or the coax, because I got the voltage divider. Because initially looking into that coax, it looks like 50 ohms. So I get that voltage divider effect. That propagates down the line, bounces off the end, and then comes back and passes by the scope again, and now I've got the second rise. So this delay in time is the round trip delay of that signal going down the coax and coming back. If I throw a couple of cursors on here, I can move them around, or I could count divisions, but I could simply use the cursors here to kind of measure that delta T between my first edge and the second rise. And we see the delta T is about 78 nanoseconds. And I'll bore you going through the math. That works out to about 25 feet. And that's about how long of a cable I've got hooked up to the other end of that BNCT. So pretty simple without any circuitry or anything like that. If all you had is a battery and a resistor and a storage scope, you can do this. The scope has got to have, the more bandwidth the scope has, the shorter the length of coax you can measure. Okay, like a 100 megahertz scope would probably be good to measure coax as short as about 3 or 4 feet. Okay, if you only had a 20 megahertz scope, you probably got to be closer to, about 5 times that, right? You probably you can look at 10 or 15 feet minimum length. Okay, because if the scope isn't fast enough, the rise time that you get here won't be fast enough, and the reflection will just run into the rise, and you won't be able to kind of see 2 discrete steps. It'll just kind of look into one like kind of lazy edge. So the faster the scope you have, the better. But if you're looking to measure a 75 feet, 100 feet of coax or something like that, even a 20 megahertz scope will be fast enough and give you enough resolution to see that with a simple battery and a 50 ohm resistor, as long as you can trigger and stop the scope based on one triggered event. So just kind of a cool little trick. Again, I've got a couple of videos on my YouTube channel that go more into this and show a circuit you can use to go and do some of this, but I just thought it was kind of fun that you can actually do this without adding any circuitry, just because of the nature of the time delay, the signal going through coax and how it reflects off the end. So again, pretty simple topic. I just wanted to kind of share that with everybody, give you an excuse to fire up a scope and do a little bit of playing.
Well, that's cool. I'm going to send all my coax up to you and have you measure it. I'll have to try that, see how it turns out.
Yeah, what would be interesting too is if you got a hunk of coax and you don't know what the impedance of the coax is, okay, what you can do is hook a little pot, a trimmer or a potentiometer at the far end of the coax, and then run this experiment where you bang it with the 9-volt resistor or the 9-volt battery and a resistor. And then when the reflection coming back goes away, when you get just a single step that's half the amplitude of the applied voltage, then with the reflection coming back, that the pot now is equal to the characteristic impedance of the transmission line. So just pull it off, measure it with an ohm meter, and you know what the impedance is of your line.
All right, we will. I'm gonna dust my scope off, and I'm gonna try that.
Well, I hope people will.
Because I need something else to do around here, man. I don't know.
I just thought it was fun. Gives you an excuse to go play with some of your equipment, and what else can we do on cold winter nights, right?
All right. Well, cool, man. Bring us another. Go ahead, Glenn.
I was going to say, we actually used to do that years ago, back in my tower climbing days, to find where the bullet hole was in our heliax up the 300-foot tower.
Yeah. Before you go climbing, you got to know how far to climb, right?
We knew exactly how far to climb, and put us within a few feet of where the bullet hole was, so we knew where we had to patch.
Well, they knew they did that so they know whether to send a young guy up or send Glenn up.
I was 19 at the time.
Oh yeah, okay. Send you up then. Okay? Yeah, send you up.
I could climb anything.
All right, man. Well, I climbed too when I was young, but I probably wasn't so smart then.
No.
I was not. Let me tell you, I was not a professional tower climber, take her down or put her up. And I actually put up, I think, an 80-foot tower there at my home. And let me tell you, I mean, I knew the basics, but there's a lot that can go wrong, believe me, man. If you watch some of these videos on YouTube and places, there's accidents that happen. And it's better to leave it with professional people if you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, so if anybody who's watching either live or watching the recording later on, if you want a copy of those little notes that I showed, the little diagrams, the hand-drawn diagrams, just shoot me an email, w2aew@arrl.net, and I'll send you a PDF.
All right, cool. All right, well, thank you, Alan.
All right.
Figure out something for next week, and let's have some more fun next week.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Let's see what time we're at 7:30, 8:37 already. Everybody just hang in here. We'll be right back.
LDG Electronics amateur need. From QRP to QRO, fixed stations, portable and remote, an LDG tuner will match your radio to your antenna using our lightning-fast, proprietary tuning algorithms. LDG is a family-owned and operated company dedicated to bringing innovative, quality products to the amateur market. All LDG products carry a full 2-year warranty that is fully transferable. Support is only a phone call or email away. We're always here to help you. Visit us on the web at ldgelectronics.com.
Well, we've got some problems tonight. Something is acting a little strange here. Is my mic? My mic is working.
Yeah, your mic's working.
My mic is working. I see you. Let me see if I can get me on here. Okay.
Yep, there you are.
All right. Some of the functions of our encoder didn't work. Interesting. Okay. Oh, let's talk. Hey, Bill Brown, why don't you jump in here, Bill? Talk to us about what's going on, man, in your life today. Ham radio related.
Alrighty. I was just running a prediction for your balloon, actually.
Okay.
Looks like it's going to go around the world at a pretty good clip, actually. So it looks pretty good. Now, I just got done talking to a group of middle school students in Forest View Middle School in Minnesota, and about the space program, and some topics about using balloons for testing electronics in a space environment. So they asked great questions, and I think there's some future rocket scientists there. The teachers, ham radio, they're involved with using balloons and ham radio to teach the kids about the atmosphere and space and science. And they were the first middle school to send a balloon completely around the world. So I've been talking to these students for some time now.
All right. And as people know, that is not Bill Mims there. Bill, we somehow a lower third got up here, but we know that this is Bill Brown, WBAEOK, Master of High Altitude Balloons. Well, that's great. So you're involved with a lot of different school activities, I think, from balloon launching to other NASA things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I typically do a number of Zoom contacts. I talk to it's called American Heritage Girls troop up in Ohio. My niece is one of the members of that, and there is about 15 to 20 girls. They're like a Girl Scout troop, and they ask great questions too. And I talked to a group of students in Australia, and they sent up a APRS balloon. Unfortunately, in the southern hemisphere, there's not a whole lot of APRS ground stations, so it had a 2-day flight. Went out past Tasmania, and they got great signals back to Tasmania, but it looked like it headed on down to Antarctica. So we haven't heard from that for a while. And then another school sent one up from Australia, and that's also middle school, and they hugged the east coast of Australia just perfectly for 2 days, and it is on its way towards Chile and Argentina. We hope that it'll hit Chile and Argentina probably within the next few days. So there's activity down in the southern hemisphere quite a bit, and my friends in Argentina just launched a balloon as well that was last heard just off the south tip of South Africa. And I talked to a group of students in South Africa too. So I'm trying to spread the word about the space program, as well as using amateur radio to teach space and science.
All right. Well, you know, next week and you're famous for all the many high altitude balloons that you've done in the past. What do you think you've done? Have you done maybe 1,000 in your career?
Well over 600.
Yeah.
Probably pushing close to 700 by now. I've dropped a lot of early balloons that I tried to go around the world, and at least trying to get across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
I've probably 30 or 40 of them in the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh yeah, and we've dropped a few there too. You know,
Yeah.
next week we're going to have a friend of yours on that's going to talk about high altitude balloons, what you've been doing. Now, this is not the Pico balloons like we've been showing here on the show, where we try to keep them at a float altitude and go around the world. These are high altitude balloons that go up, what Bill, 90,000, 100,000, 120 maybe?
They can go as high as 130,000 feet or more. Typically, though, they go up to about 100 to 115,000 feet.
Yeah,
And,
well,
they can carry
and he's going to talk about some of the high altitude balloons he's launched. I know that he's got a lot of pictures, and of course with these balloons too, it's easy to take a camera up. These aren't the Pico balloons that you have to keep the weight down to just a few grams. I mean, you carry some pretty heavy loads, don't you, Bill?
Oh, yes. Upwards of 12 pounds. You're allowed to fly up to 6 pounds per payload, total of 12, so you can put a whole lot of stuff in there. And we typically have APRS trackers on board, probably 2 or 3 of them for redundancy, and then Find Me Spot, which uses a global star as a backup because it can transmit from the ground to the global star satellites. And I also usually put a Iridium modem on board that's hooked up to a GPS receiver, and that sends an email to you of the position report every few minutes, and that goes through the Iridium satellite system. Mm-hmm. And then I have a Python program I wrote that grabs that email and converts the data and 40 formats to APRS and sends it directly to aprs.fi and tracker.habhub.org. So it shows up on the balloon tracking sites just like it was an APRS object, similar to what I do for the Whisper balloons to turn those into an APRS object.
All right, let's take just a quick break. I want to make an announcement here. Since we are now on WBCQ on 7490, let me just, again, to our shortwave listeners out there, we don't want to forget about them. If you're listening out there on international shortwave, the frequency is 7490 kilohertz. That's coming to you from WBCQ. It's a real famous shortwave station out of Monticello, Maine. We'd love to hear from you. This show is about ham radio, a little bit of shortwave mixed in. We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to tom@w5kub.com, tom@w5kub.com. You can join the show live on Tuesday nights if you have internet access by going to w5kub.com. We'd love to hear from you and love for you to join us. Also, we've got some new people in the chat room. I want to say welcome to everybody in the chat room tonight. I'm not sure how they found out about the show. It'd be cool if they'll put us a little note in the chat room of how they found us. I want to welcome all of them, and I want to remind everybody, please join our Facebook, Ham Radio Facebook group. It's called W5KUB. Actually, it's called Amateur Radio Roundtable, which is the name of the show, but that's a lot of typing. And if you just type W5KUB, the same room will come up, and join it. We have over 11,100 hams now in that group, and it's pretty active. I was looking at the stats on it the other day, and it's quite more active than many of the ham radio sites that are out there. So we welcome you to join us there. Well, Bill, let's talk a minute about the one we launched today, and you said you did a prediction for us, and I guess is it gonna look like? Let's see, I've got the high split. Here's the high split. Is it similar to that, you think?
Yes, that's pretty much it. I just ran one right now, and
okay.
Mine goes a little farther out than that.
Yeah.
I can share my screen and show you. what mine looks
So
like.
this is basically the same highway we take all the time, man. A little curve up to the north. We come down. We go through the Straits of Gibraltar. We kind of go near Morocco there, Libya, Middle East, and then we head on over toward the stands.
Yeah, except for the detour you took on your last flight.
Yeah, and we want to stay away from that detour. Did you say you want to pull up your prediction?
Yeah, let me bring up my prediction.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Let me know if you see that.
All right. It's there it is.
So
okay.
on the left is the flight path based on the last report we saw near sunset today in southern Alabama. And so by sunrise, which will be about 1200 UTC on this map, which is halfway between the two big red triangles, it'll be out near Bermuda tomorrow morning. And it'll be heading across the Atlantic in a pretty good clip. At times you're going over 90 miles an hour today.
Yeah.
So it looks like you'll be over Spain in just a day and a half, which is great. And then it dips down into Algeria and Libya and Egypt. And then the good news is it's going to cut right across my friends in New Delhi, India. And there are a number of whisper ground stations there that we can get up and running. So you should have pretty good coverage once it goes across into that region, plus or minus 1,000 miles or so from northern India. And then always when we get into China, there's always some good activity on whisper mode and APRS in China and Japan and Korea. So we always get some good coverage over there. The hardest part, though, is right as you cross the stands, as we call them, just north of India. That's a tough area to get reception because it's a multi-hop skip, and there's not a lot of receive stations in that region. But you're going a little farther south, so I think you're going to have good coverage as you cut across India. So we'll probably fill in the gap on this flight.
Well, I hope so.
And you'll notice you'll be in Hawaii in 1 week from now. Looks like you'll be flying directly over Hawaii. So
well, that is cool. I like that prediction. I don't like going down to Burma for a week. I don't like that. So let's see. I've got a picture here. The team is back, everybody. The team is back on this flight. We've got Louie, Dewey, and Huey, and they're back with us. There they are, right there, right before the launch this morning, right before they got aboard the craft. And I think that's Louie there. He actually was holding the camera, and he got his head peeked around in front there. But that's Louie, I think. So they've been really practicing really hard for this next mission. They've done a lot of flying, and they've done a lot of weightless stuff. They've been working with NASA up there and flying around in their zero-G test or whatever they do. So they're getting ready. We hope to take this thing up like really, really high. And I'm a little disappointed, Bill. Today I only saw 43,000. I know the last one we exceeded 45, and I know we're much lighter. So maybe over the next couple of days, maybe we might gain a little bit. I don't know.
You'll gain some altitude because the balloon needs to stretch out a little bit. It'll take a day or two for the material to start stretching during the day.
Yeah, and we don't want it to stretch too much, actually, because there's
a limit.
Yeah.
And so the other thing is there's differences in atmospheric pressure over different regions. So depending on if you're in a higher or low pressure zone, your float altitude will vary as much as 1,000 feet or more. So.
Yeah. Hey, here's a quick, about a 1 minute video or less. This was the launch today. Nothing great. We didn't have a cameraman, and it's really hard to be cameraman and launch at the same time, but here it is.
Okay, here we go. 22 is going to launch. Let her rip.
So there's Ed holding the balloon,
No, you don't come this way.
and he's about to turn it loose. There we go. He lets it go.
Okay.
And I've got the tracker in my hand. There we go. It picks the tracker up, and it takes on off. It's really hard with a telephone
All right, 22 is in the
to
air.
keep your eye on that balloon, especially when it gets really small and you're trying to look in the phone to see where it is. I was able to keep.
Some surface winds today.
We had a little bit of wind. It wasn't a whole lot, but we had a little bit, and we've got maybe 100-acre field there. We just go to the side where we have good distance, and we'll launch it. It went almost due north today when we launched.
And then it had to due south towards MFJ. You almost flew directly over MFJ.
Yeah. Then it headed
Hard
down
to
and
keep
went
the
over
camera
Starkville.
on the
You
balloon.
can see it's getting quite a bit out of range of the camera. You can see the bubble up in the top, and the rest of it is pretty empty there. I'll zoom back a little bit, let you see how far away it is. So you can see it's pretty much gone right there as far as the camera view. So that was our launch today, and it went off well. A little cool out this morning, but normally we didn't have to get in any mud or anything. Sometimes that feels a little muddy out there, but it was in real good shape today. So let's see if I had any other thing. I've got, Bill, I've looked at today some of the different whisper and different things, and it's interesting right there. You can see the locations picking it up. They're all within inside the sun, and they're just almost not outside the sun. It's like the clouds turn it off, man. And I'll say I had another one, I think. Maybe not.
The ionosphere turns it off.
Yeah. So that looked pretty. That was launch. That was right at launch right there. We had some real good coverage around the U.S. right there. But then as the gray line came in, 20 meters just didn't want to do much in the gray line.
Yeah, but look at that. You got reception report on the other side of the world in Australia.
Yeah. We had a couple reports today at 9,000 miles away. I think Madagascar was one of them, and Australia, I think, was the other one. Both were about 9,000. Yeah.
Imagine what it's going to be like when the sunspot cycle really kicks up and you've got super propagation.
Yeah. So there it is, kind of in a testing mode right there. I did relocate per Edward and Bill's suggestions. I did take the super caps off the top there that could block some sunlight. And of course, this is winter, so we have less hours of sunlight. I did put the super caps underneath the styrofoam, and that might have got us a little bit more. I was surprised, Bill, today that the solar angle was down around 12. I mean, from what I saw on previous flights, it looked like, I needed to be up in the 22 or something, 22 degrees. But I was a little surprised today when I saw it 12 degrees.
Yeah, you did good. You were typically on your last flight around 17, 18 degrees.
Okay.
Solar angle for operation. But today's flight, it operated clear down to 12 degrees, which is very important this time of year because that'll determine the farthest north it can operate because the solar angle, as we get close to the winter solstice, you're going to be, your sun angle is going to be at, say, 50 degrees latitude. You're going to be right at that limit. Well, you'll be able to go up about 55 degrees or so with 12 degrees solar angle, which is great.
There's the rough weight of the tracker, the super caps, and the solar panels and the styrofoam. It came in about 8.5 grams. That didn't include the antenna. The antenna is about 1.5 grams. So we came out a little over 10 grams, I think, today. After I moved the caps to the bottom, I put some more adhesive, some more glue in there, kind of hold stuff together, and I think that added. That adhesive. It don't take too many drops to mount up, Bill, to add weight.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, what kind of fishing line did you use on this
I'm
one?
using that super whatever Spectra line. And I went down. I originally started out with 50-pound test, and I went down to 10-pound test. It's really strong, and that stuff is so thin you almost can't see it to tie a knot in it. I mean, that stuff is light, and
So you use 10-pound?
I use 10-pound. Yeah. What would you use?
15 usually.
Yeah. I don't think I can break 10 pounds off that thing, to tell you the truth. I mean, if I pull 10 pounds, it'd probably tear through the balloon, more than likely. But
You can buy it in yellow and red, which is easier to see when you're out in the field. So I typically use the bright high vis.
yeah,
yellow.
I might try that. Now here it is, getting ready to take it out the field. I carry it in a box, but the thing is so fragile. I mean, you can't even hardly pick this thing up with your hand and put your thumb on top of it, or you'll snap one of those solar cells. So we've got to be very careful with it. The two rolls you see in there are just some forms to roll the antennas up. We've got the top antenna, the bottom half of the antenna rolled up.
What gauge wire do you use for the antenna?
I'm using number 36 magnet wire.
Oh, okay.
And that's pretty small. I mean, hey, my eyesight, even with my glasses, that's pretty tough. It can become invisible pretty easy. Maybe I ought to try some 42 or something, That'd get really small.
I typically use 34 gauge and 36 gauge.
Yeah. Well, that's 36.
It's too much smaller than that. It's about the strength of a human hair. It's much easier to snap it off, and you really don't gain that much in weight gain.
One of the things that Bill, I think I noticed the last few days in just experimenting with it. I used the tip of the soldering iron to try, to take off that enamel off the 36, because if you scrape it with a X-Acto knife or something, you almost cut into that wire. You got a chance of denting that little wire. So I found it's easier to take the tip of the soldering iron and just lay the wire on a table and just kind of, brush the enamel off the end. But I honestly think a couple of times, I think when I was soldering that number 36, I think it melted. I don't know what the melting.
The easiest way is just wrap it around.
Yeah.
You have like a hookup wire.
Yeah.
I typically use 26 gauge, real thin.
Yeah, and you can see it here. Like you can see a little white wire sticking up there.
Right, and
that's some flex. Yeah, that's some flex. That's about a 6-inch piece of flexible, very small wire, and it is wrapped around the end and soldered and taped with the. What's that tape? What's that special tape you use?
Kapton.
Kapton tape. Yeah, that's got some Kapton tape on it there. So that's kind of what happened today, and we're flying. I hope it shows up tomorrow. Nothing's guaranteed. And Bill, just like I told, I tell many people, man, if you want to make one go around the world, my experience is you got to go 10 times to get around the world, and do everything you can, Well, there's not much you can do. You got to have luck and whatever, but you got to fly high, you got to be light, and you got to have Mother Nature on your side. And I think 1 out of 10 you'll make it. We made it on number 9. Now, we didn't make it on 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever. So I think we're on about number 13 again. So I'm not sure where we are in that range to do it again. But we're gonna.
I have a very good feeling about this one because of how quick it's going to go around the world. You really caught the jet stream perfect on this one.
Yeah, let me show you. Let's while you're talking about that, let's look at this real quick. Look at this. Here's windy, and at our altitude, at our altitude here of 13,500, 1,500 meters, we're somewhere, if you can see the mouse, we're going to be somewhere right along in here, I guess. Well, we're going to be down here, I think, in the morning. Isn't that right, Bill?
Well, you'll be farther east. You'll be over Bermuda.
Okay, we'll be out here somewhere, but I think we're going to be this low because there's the top of Florida right there. I think we come down through Florida a little bit.
Probably be just east of Charleston.
Oh, will it? Okay, if you look here, we've got some winds out here, 106 miles an hour. I mean, this is look at there, 109. There's 104. We got some good winds out here at our altitude. Now, whether or not we'll pick them up, I don't know. But it looks
you're
like
in the peak season for making it around the world with a ham radio balloon.
we got a what? What was that?
Stream from December through March are really the best months to make a quick trip around the world.
Now let's look at it real quick. I'm going to go to this slide here, and you can see again. Here's the U.S. and look at this jet stream here. This is at that's at 12,000 meters, 39,000 feet. It is booking right here. See, 141 miles an hour.
I've seen them go as high as 220 miles an hour ground speed.
Yeah, I mean, if we get in that, we're going to be booking it. I can tell you right now. And let's see where the storms are. It's probably going to be like a football play. They probably have a storm out there ready to block us. Let's see. Well, not too bad. Let's see. There's a little one right through here we're going to have to cross, but not bad.
That's not too bad.
Not bad at all. Okay, well, let me get back here. Okay.
Fast hurricane season, so you should be good now.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with it. Now, hey, let's talk another project for the show, and I want to talk about EME or moon bounce. Glenn, I'm going to need your help. Probably you're going to have to come up here and bring your amplifier one day.
Sure.
But what I want to do first, I want to just receive. If there are people doing moon bounce, I should be able to receive it. If I can't receive it, there's no way I'm going to make a contact. So the first step is to receive it. So I have a very modest 2 meter and 440 Yagis outside on azimuth elevation rotors. But it's going to be critical pointing it at the moon. I don't think my rotors are that accurate to read degrees in here. I mean, I've got a computer program that will tell me the moon is going to be at this elevation and at this latitude and longitude, but more than likely, it probably is not really exactly there. So here's what I'm going to do. I have built me a camera. You see that little camera right there? This is a wireless camera, and I have put me a piece of metal on here. And let's say this is the boom of the 440 rig. This is the boom. Your elements across the boom here. We're going to aim this thing up at the moon, and if we put this camera, on the end here like this. Yeah, if we put the camera on the end of our Yagi, I can adjust how the camera's pointing. Then on the monitor down here at the EME station, I should be able to hit the azimuth elevation rotors, and I should be able to point this thing right at the moon. So I think that's going to help us. That's going to help us with the moon, at least the positioning of the moon. So that's step one. The other thing I've done is I was able to get my TS2000 interfaced to WSJT-X, and boy, was that trouble. I've run into this problem before, going in the accessory jack on the back of the TS2000 or any of the Kenwoods, the TS570, the 2000, any of those. It's a challenge to go in that data accessory jack on the back. And if you look at the internet and do a search, you will find thousands of people. You will find hundreds of videos where people are trying to make that rear data jack work, and it just can't make it work. And I'm going to do a little video on it, but let me tell you what the secret is on that. First of all, it's using a Signal Link USB, which is a really nice, fine piece of little interface. And I even bought the cable that plugs into the 13-pin DIN plug that plugs into the back of the radio. And then I have a serial cable from the back of the radio to the computer. And I have the USB cable from the USB down to the computer. So I'm using basically I'm using two USB ports. I had trouble getting it to key the transmitter. The receiver worked fine, but I had trouble keying the transmitter. And I went through, it's like a combination lock. You've got like 15 things you got to have all set right and understand and everything. So I try this, I try that, I try this. And I finally got it keying. You could hear, the receiver would go off. You'd see it go into transmit, but it wouldn't transmit a tone. Now, I already knew one thing about the TS2000 because I experienced that when I tested the Rig Pi and some other things. On that accessory jack where you put the TNC or your digital connection, you've got your audio in, audio out on that little DIN plug. And of course, in your menu, you can set the volume levels for each of the inputs and outputs, and that's independent of your front control, so that's great. So the 13-pin accessory plug has your audio in and audio out, and it has a PTT lead. Now, I learned that you have to key that PTT lead on the back of that plug for audio to go in on that accessory jack. And somehow I kind of let it lapse from my memory because I'd set up my program and I could hear it key up. It would key up, but the audio tones wasn't going through, and I don't know why I didn't think about that. So I was trying to use cat control.
Data, right?
And what was that, Alan?
Yeah, there's a separate PTT for audio and for data.
Yeah. Well,
Quite
yeah.
a lot of people. Yeah.
So I finally realized that I've got to. It was keying up. I was trying to use cat control because I was using cat control when I take the WSJT program and say go to 20 meters. It puts the radio on 20 meters. If I go to 40, it puts the radio on 40 meters. It controls the radio. But you got to separate that from the audio side and the signal link because it's not really, they're not connected together. And there's one important thing you got to understand on a signal link. It does not underline support cat control. You have to set it to Vox. Now, that don't mean Vox in your radio because it doesn't use Vox in your radio. But they call it Vox to key the PTT line, to give you a keyed line. So I was using cat, and when I was using cat, it would key up, but no audio tone going through that back jack. But what was happening, cat was keying up the front mic connector and not the back connector. All right, so I get all this kind of figured out. I go, okay, it's coming together now. So I go to, instead of cat control, I go to Vox, which, again, I'm not using Vox on the radio. It's not in Vox. So I go to Vox on the WSJTX program. Okay, so I go to Vox. Now I'm keying the back push to talk on the accessory plug. I'm keying it. Great, right? Well, it's not great because I'm still getting no transmit signal out. You can plug a earphone set in the little monitor jack on the back of the signal link, and you can hear the transmit tone. You can hear it transmitting, but it's not going in the radio. Well, I realized that level is so low, you can only see it from the oscilloscope on the input of the radio. The problem was, once I got the keying that back push to talk, still no output because I didn't have enough audio level to make the transmitter bring up any power. So once I got the audio brought back up and keying it back, I started getting audio through it. Now, did it work? No. The audio then was too high, and I finally realized that the audio was too high. I mean, I could see people calling CQ, and I'd try to answer them, and I'd hear the tones going out, but nobody would answer me. So I finally realized, okay, the audio is too hot on the transmit side. Once I cranked that back down, then I started making contacts. So I was testing it on FT8, same thing for JT65. All that stuff works the same way. So after it only took me 2.5 days to figure that out. Man, I was about to pull my hair out, man, but I got it. So we're going to use JT65. To use JT65 on 440, I think it's JT65 either B or C. That's selected through the configuration screen here. Now, my TS2000 will run only 50 watts, I think, on 440. That's really not enough to make a contact on EME. I should be able to receive, and as I mentioned, the first step is going to be to receive Earth contacts. Once I start receiving that, then the next step, Glenn, we need some power here, Glenn. Maybe you can come up one night or something when the moon is going to be out there, and we can try to, we need about 100 watts. And, if I think you said you had a 160 watt amp, maybe we could, drive that thing down to maybe 90 watts or 100 watts. We put a big fan on it, What do you think, Glenn?
Yeah, I've got a Mirage, the B3016. It's 160 watts with the receive preamp on 2 meters. Don't have anything for 440, though, so it'd have to be on 2.
Now, wait a minute. Does the Mirage transmit on 440?
No.
Oh, that's not going to help me, unless we try it on 2 meters. I mean, I guess we can try a 2 meter EME.
Yeah, because finding a 440 amp of any size is going to cost you a bunch of bucks.
Well, it wasn't going to cost me anything because I was going to borrow.
Well, finding one.
I have a D1010 that is now carried by MSJ. They have a different, I think it's a Mirage now, but the D1010 on 440 is a 100 watt amplifier.
Yeah, I want to be careful whatever we use. We're talking JT65 is a contact back and forth is 7 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So that's about what, a minute? What was that, Alan?
Yeah, I was wondering, since you got a 7-minute exchange time, do you have to track the Doppler shift during that time?
Well,
will you get enough of a shift that you actually have to follow it?
Yeah, I've been reading about that. When we work satellite, we do even Doppler shift, with satellite. But with the moon, I think it's going to be moving a little slower.
Well, I guess it depends on how far down the horizon it is.
Yeah.
That relative velocity, if it's pretty close to overhead, then you're not going to get so much. But as closer you get to the horizon, the faster it's moving away from you. So we're moving.
Yeah, and I'm reading too, and your best chances of working EME is when the moon is at the horizon, not up in the sky, but down low. And somehow the Earth forms some type of conduit or something to help your signal. I don't know. I'm going to have to read more about it. So, Glenn, your assignment is going to be to help figure out how to do this.
Well, something you got to realize is you're going to be keyed down for 48 seconds or thereabouts.
Exactly.
So you're going to have something if you're going to use an amp that can handle that kind of load.
Well, and that's what I was saying. I mean, typically, in the olden days when we ran teletype, of course, back then we ran tubes, but we'd run, half power, and we'd put big fans on there to cool it. As long as you can get the air moving and everything, you'll be okay. And as long as you can, reduce the power down to a safe deal. And of course, we don't want to do anything that will be, dangerous to any equipment. So the first step is going to be receiving. If we can't receive, we shouldn't even think about transmitting. Let's see what's going on in the chat room. Let's see.
Well, what are you going to be using as an antenna for this?
Well, it depends on it. Well, for my satellite system out there, I have a 2-meter Yagi and a 440 Yagi. Of course, for the EME, you use one antenna, and we would either have to use 2 meters or we'd have to use 440, whichever one.
How many elements?
Well, they're not much. I think it's either the 2 meters, either 11 or 13 element.
Okay.
And I think the 440 is probably about the same. It's somewhere between elements. I don't have stacked stuff for either one, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got a pair of stacked Quaggies here. I'm trying to think of the number of elements, but it's like 7 elements, I think.
Now, what's a
Maybe
Quaggy?
11
Is that like a quad?
Yeah, it's a quad Yagi.
Yeah.
Wire.
Is that something you got from Emmett or?
No, I got them. It's a Scorpion 88. I can't remember the name of the outfit. They used to be at Dayton.
Yeah.
And I got them from there. They're PVC and a wire type antenna.
Right. Well, Emmett with radio waves has come out with almost the same thing about a year ago. The quad 2 meter and 440, and it's I think it's a PVC type.
Yeah, I've got a pair of them.
Actually, his is a fiberglass cross.
Right.
And then the wire, around it. I'm not sure what the center is.
Mine are actually, they look like they're just fiberglass shafts with bow and arrow nocks on the ends, and the wire is threaded through that. And I've got a pair of those phased, one horizontal, one vertical, and they're on the Hazel mount.
Yeah.
Haven't used them in 4 years, but they're there.
Yeah, somebody in the chat room said I hit a button and took my background off. No, that's not true. I am sitting in Studio B. That's for blue. I'm in Studio B right now. All right, well, this is going to be exciting. I think our balloon is going to do good. I don't know. That's going to be fun, and I'm going to start looking at the moon bounce here, see what I can do. The moon's going to have to be in the right place. It's going to have to be off my backyard, and I've got a lot of trees and stuff back there. All the leaves are off, and I can see the moon pretty good, but I'm still afraid that those trees can still block some of the signal.
Yeah, I was going to say also with that, just a couple elements that you're talking about. Your beam width is going to be so broad that exact aiming isn't really going to buy you a whole lot as far as precision,
I'm not. It's not going to be real sharp, and that's probably good. I mean.
Yeah. And as far as Doppler, I don't think that's going to be as big as of an issue because JT65 can handle a lot of slop in the bandwidth anyway.
And there's some. But I was reading, there's places to adjust that. I think adjust that shift in there, and somehow I think it tells you in there how much to adjust by. I'm not sure.
Yeah, actually, if you're using like the SAT PC32, it has the moon tracking mode in it, and it will actually control the Doppler shift of the radio for you.
Yeah. Okay. So Mark here, N4BCD. Hello, Mark. And Mark is the chairman of the Huntsville Ham Fest. Mark's in here. We hope Huntsville happens this year. He said one of our DX Club guys worked China on EME the other day. The moon was 12 degrees above the horizon. He worked 45 minutes for the contact. Oh, boy. I guess it's not easy. Yeah. Let's see what else is going on. Ron says, since no one uses beepers anymore, I need to get a Motorola paging system. They're 250 watt continuous duty out there on 440. So Glenn, why don't you find us a Motorola paging transmitter? for us to use.
Why don't you find me a ham fest that I can go to, and I'll buy you one?
Well, I hadn't thought about buying. I hadn't thought about buying one at a ham fest.
Well, first you
just
got to find a ham fest.
I was just going to get it off the market. So I was going to get it from AT&T or somebody. Or,
you know what? Maybe look on eBay.
that's a good point. And you know what? You can find just about anything on eBay.
I had a great UHF antenna that I used for amateur television, fast scan on 439 megahertz. And that was the MBM 88 element, but it was basically, had it had a quad reflector, quad driven element, and then crossed elements for the directors. And that was a very nice, it was broadband for one, so it was great for television. I'm trying to remember who made it. I think it was a European manufacturer, but it was called the 88 element Quaggy.
Wow.
But Quaggy are a great antenna, and of course you can make your own. And I love the quad reflector and driven element because it is really, I think it works great. So I used to have a 3-element quad on the HF bands with big fiberglass poles, and I could hear things that nobody else in town could hear with that and be heard. It was a great antenna, but one day we got a big ice storm and it just all cracked and crumbled and fell to the ground, a big ball of wire and fiberglass. So just keeping something like that in the air is a real challenge.
Well, yeah. Hey, our friend Mark up in near Dayton here, he's already found us on eBay a transmitter. UHF
Okay.
70 centimeter, 300 watt radio base repeater. Hey, that's probably continuous duty if it's a repeater, man. Let's guess. We need to get that.
Well, now something to think about. That's going to be FM. Are you going to be using FM or sideband for the?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. What do you use?
I'm thinking you're using sideband.
Wideband.
You think it's sideband? I kind
I'm
of think
almost certain it's sideband. So you're going to need to
think it
get a
might be.
sideband 2-meter rig, which ain't going to be a repeater.
Well, unless I get a 2-meter sideband repeater.
You're going to need an amp. You're not going to find a 2-meter sideband repeater.
Well, let's just look in eBay here. Let's see if we let's see if we can find a 2-meter sideband. Mark, check for it. Mark, do this.
The only place you
Check
can
for
find a 2-meter sideband repeater is at Dayton, because if it ain't at Dayton, it ain't nowhere.
Mark, sideband repeater. I want to see how many show up out there. All right, man. Well, might just have to
To be
modify.
honest, I don't know of any sideband repeaters.
Well,
You're talking like what the satellites use, which is a whole, a transverter kind of deal.
well, I'm just thinking
Right.
here. Let me think, man. If I keyed up a Memphis repeater and I was on sideband, I bet you'd key up. What do you think?
Do what now?
If I keyed up a Memphis repeater and I was on sideband, I bet you would key up. Now, I wonder what kind of modulation. I wonder if any kind of modulation would go through that.
Now, you can use just a regular amp that will work on FM for sideband.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because they're made to be keyed down. So 45 seconds on an amp made
Yeah,
for FM
yeah.
shouldn't be a big issue.
If it says like it's a 100-watt amp and you're going to be keyed down on that thing for a minute, then you're going to have to derate. I know what we did for amateur television. We had a 100-watt amplifier, and I had a fan on it, but I had to keep it down around 25 to 50 watts output because it would compress the sync levels of the video if you you drove it too hard. Plus, it would get pretty darn hot because we were down for minutes at a time running the fast scan television.
Yeah, and we, back in the day, we were talking teletype earlier, radio teletype. I did a lot of radio teletype back in the 70s, and that's continuous duty. And when you send one of those pictures, you're probably talking, 25 minutes sometimes transmission maybe. I mean, it's a long time. I don't remember now, but it's a long time. And we would, I had I used a Heathkit HW100, and that was a 180 watt transmitter. And you know, I'd cut it back to like 80 watts or something. And you put a big fan on top of it to blow air through it. You never had a problem with it, you know.
Well, also, if you think about that, you know, that's audio shift keying typically, so it's sideband, so you're not going to be full key down like you would with AM.
No, this would be no. Yeah, I mean, you were on sideband, but the audio tones were constant. It was constant.
Yeah,
It wasn't varying. It wasn't varying. It doesn't vary like voice, where your voice peaks go up down and you're at 50%.
If you look at a sideband signal, it is.
Not when you're running teletype. It's not when you're running teletype. It's not. You got a steady mark and space tone there that doesn't. You know.
It may be steady, but it's a sine wave. It goes up and down.
Well, let me think about this a minute.
Draw it on a piece of paper.
Let me think about this.
If you're transmitting a continuous tone on single side, it just looks like a CW tone that's offset from the carrier by that amount.
Yeah, and that's worse than talking for. Hey, that's worse to send that tone for 1 minute than talking for 1 minute.
Absolutely, yeah. It's 100% duty cycle.
Right. It's 100. Yeah, let's term it like that. Those tones are 100%. They're 100% duty cycle.
Because even something like PSK 31, which is a phase shift, it just is a phase reversal, and it just momentarily goes through zero when it phase reverses.
And that makes sense. You know, that's why they want you to drop your power if you're going to run those modes.
Yeah. It's like we talked about the spectral content of signals a couple weeks ago. You know, a single tone, audio tone transmitted in single sideband looks just like a CW carrier that's off from the carrier. So
right.
Like I say, brain freeze. I've been digging over in the lab too much today. Looking at sine wave.
That's all right.
Well, I mean, I've been looking at 45 baud on the oscilloscope all day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Because, I mean, I've had to build a decoder and then feed that into the UART, and, you know, so I'm dealing with audio and the signal. So,
so what else can we do here for our viewers out there? Can we do some kind of big Zoom thing one night and invite like 100 people in here, or have a show? I'm looking for something to do to get other people involved with the show.
I mean, does the Zoom account that you have support that now? Like, I've been involved in several meetings where we've had hundreds of people on Zoom. So
I have I've got a paid Zoom account. They give you these free ones, and there's always something that's a restriction on them.
Right.
But I've got a paid Zoom. I think I forget how many people we can have, but I think you can have several hundred. So we need to do something.
It'll be fun to do a kind of a live roundtable where we see everybody. I mean, like I said, there are a couple of meetings that I've been involved with, not only here but around the world too, with some of the talks.
Okay. So Ron joined the meeting late. He wants to know who's the guy in a plaid shirt. So let me tell him. Let me show you who the plaid shirt is. There we go. Right there.
That's me. The plaid shirt.
There we go. That's Alan. He's our tech tips guy. You need to tune in every week to see what Alan has for us. Alan's up in New Jersey.
New Jersey. Yeah. People that say Jersey like that are people who are not in New Jersey.
Did I say that right? I mean, I tried to, Or is it just Jersey? I don't know.
Just Jersey.
He's north of the Smith and Wesson line, which means he ain't from around here.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let me get the name off here. That's Glenn talking here. Okay. All right. Well, 10-meter preamp in my sense. I was reading.
Yeah, that was me. I built an HW101.
Yeah.
And put a 10-meter preamp in it just so I could hear Oscar 7.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was when it was first launched. We're talking 70s.
Yeah, I see a bill here, W4WNT. He looked up moon bounce on the on Google, and I've looked it up too, just to try to collect information. Moon Bounce is a rock music group. I don't know if you guys know it, but if you do that, if you do a search for it, it's going to come up rock music, man.
No, we don't want to do rock music.
Yeah.
We want to bounce off rocks.
Now, I will say one thing that would be good for receiving EME is a mass-mounted low noise preamp.
Yeah.
Some of those gas FET preamps are down around 0.6 dB.
Yeah, but that's probably not going to happen because it would be a more complex, I'd have to switch it in and out of the circuit because on EME, we're going to transmit and receive on the same antenna. And
actually, the MFJ's got one that has a built-in TR switch.
Is it a switch? Yeah, I mean, it would have to be built to switching. Yeah, that probably adds a couple more dollars to it.
I have some that, forget the manufacturer of it, but I wanted it at an AMSAT conference, and it's a nice 440 preamp, and it's got a gas FET front end and some helical filters, and it's a very low noise figure. It'd be great for moon bounce.
Yeah.
Now, this amp that I got does have a built-in preamp, but it's not mass mounted.
You get rid of your coax, loss.
Right.
Mass mounted, at least.
Well, I'm trying to get Martin to see if he can find something up there. They're checking. Yeah, I could put if I had one that switched, say a 100-watt amplifier that switched in and out, I could put it up at the antenna. I could just run me some power up there.
MFJ's got the preamps.
Yeah, I could just set that up there at the beams and just get some good power up there and run the amp up there at the antenna.
Advanced Receiver Research has a nice mass-mounted preamp that's very low noise.
I've got some of the advanced receiver preamps here that I used to use on some repeaters that I used to own. Yeah. And used to use a lot of little gas FETs in the LNAs. I homebrewed some satellite systems back in the 70s, and I think the time limit's over. I did get HBO free, and I did get all those other channels free. But homebrew C-band systems. And Bill, I don't know if you've seen this. My first antenna was a spherical antenna, and it was angle iron. It was 14 foot tall and 14 foot wide. Had a curve to it. It had 6-inch bolts that went through the curved angle iron into wood strips, and you took the bolts and you warp the wood in with the bolts, and then you take a hardware cloth, and we covered it with hardware cloth. So we had a 14-foot spherical, and I've got some pictures. I'll try to dig those up. The feed horn was about I don't know, about 1.5 feet long. It's pretty large at the opening, and the LNA then, not LNB, but the LNA, and maybe even later the LNB, went on a feed horn, and we had a rotor behind it, and it sat on a stand, and it set 1.5 times the distance away from the spherical. The spherical was 14 foot.
You're talking about a parabolic dish.
Well, this is not a parabolic. It's called a spherical, and because a parabolic has a focal point right in the center.
Right.
This does not. So what you do is the feed horn in LNA was on a little TV rotor, and it was mounted on a little stand, and you'd set the stand out 1.5 times the diameter. It would be 14 plus 7 feet out. Now man, it's been so long. For satellite 1, I forget what they're calling now. For satellite 1, it may be over here at the side and 3 feet off the ground. For satellite 4, it might be almost directly in front, but it may be up 6.5 feet. You would actually move it, and of course, the polarity, we would take the rotor and we would turn the LNA, 90 degrees with the antenna rotor. But that was called a spherical. I've got to find it. I've got some pictures of me standing by it, and that was kind of a neat antenna.
Yeah, that was back in the day before they encoded and encrypted all that stuff.
Yeah, it was. And later I moved up to a parabolic dish, which I liked much better. I didn't have to go out there and move that feed horn around, different spots. I had them marked on the ground. This is sat 3 or whatever, But with the parabolic dish, I was able to rotate the dish, and by the offset on there, it would track the Clark belt. And
we had a business years ago with my dad, and I started a business in the early '80s, installing 10-foot dishes, and we found the best dish and the best rotors, and we found one that was used as a worm gear drive rather than that linear actuator that they used on a lot of them. And it was super accurate. It was great reception. But it was a short-lived business because they scrambled it about 6 months after we started.
Yeah. Scrambling was tough at that point, but I watched it for a number of years before that, and everything was homebrew about it. Even the rotator, whatever motor we could get to put on a jack stand, and we would rig that up, and then I built the control box to move the dish up and down. And what I did to know what satellites, I had like a 5-inch meter. Took the cover off and put me a new, a blank piece of paper in that meter. And I would mark it. This is SATCOM 1, SATCOM 2, whatever. Put a little mark on that meter. And then out at the antenna, we'd take a pot, and on the axis where the antenna would turn, we would couple a little pot in there, and run that back in. And of course, as it moved, the voltage would change. You'd calibrate that, and that meter would go up. There's SATCOM 1. Now you're on SATCOM 3, or you're on F3, or F2, or whatever. And it worked really well. We did that for a long time.
Now I have a question. Have you ever tried I can tell you, by the way, if you want a 10-foot dish with a great motor mount, I can tell you where 2 of them are if you want to drive to Ohio and pick them up.
Nah, I
One's
don't
in my dad's backyard. There's weeds growed up all around it, but other than that. But I wondered if you ever tried a rhombic antenna on 70 centimeters.
A rhombic on 70? No, I haven't.
Those are very high gain, and they're just basically strips of wire in a rhombic configuration. But I built one of those years ago for amateur television reception, and it worked pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
It had pretty good. Look up rhombic antenna and see if that might be a good option for high gain.
No, rhombic, is that basically, that's just a wire, isn't it? And has it got like a resistor at the end or something? A terminating resistor?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I've thought about doing something like that for HF, even. That would
be pretty big.
It would take some space, yeah.
You would need my back 40 here.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long a rhombic. I mean, I might could squeeze a 20 meter in. I don't know.
I built years ago on 70 centimeters was 26 feet long. I built it out of wood and wire and a termination resistor, and it seemed to have pretty good gain to it.
I don't know if you were with us last week. We were talking about different antennas. Did you hear me, or have you seen the antenna where they use 2 ropes through the forest, and they use those ropes to put 2-meter elements on? And this thing was like
I have seen that, yeah.
60 feet long. I mean, that is some antenna, But I don't think you get that much more gain when you keep adding elements like that. The what?
Well, you would get a gain improvement every time you doubled the length of it, but
yeah.
I think you get to some diminishing.
Well,
returns.
yeah, I mean, you double the length, and I guess you get 3 dB gain, but then guess what? You got to double that double again, right?
Right.
I mean, instead of 2, it's got to be 4 times, and then, oh man, and 8 times. So,
Yeah, at some point you're into diminishing returns, and it's
Yeah,
just not worth the
yeah.
wire.
I was going to say your antenna would end up being from Memphis to Kingsport, Tennessee. You cover the.
I bet Alan could figure out a way to compress that somehow to make it smaller.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, to get.
Kind of reminds me of years ago. I was back when I had a real job supporting products and designing products and things like that. I designed a fiber optic transceiver that was used in optical networking, and we were competing with a couple of other guys that were making similar products. They're all kind of like drop-in compatible things, and we had a customer up in New Hampshire somewhere that was having some difficulty with both our part and one of our competitors' parts. And my boss told me to go up to New Hampshire and fix the problem so that our part worked and our competitor's part didn't. I told him, I said, I'm going to find the problem, and both of our parts are going to work. In order to get ours to work and our competitor not to work is going to take a better engineer than me. So, bottom line, I went up there and figured out what he was doing wrong in terms of his signal routing and decoupling and stuff like that, and everything worked for everybody. But I just told him, I said, I wasn't going to be able to kind of solve the impossible, unfortunately.
All right, guys. Well, we've just about filled the show up here. Is there anything else we want to talk about tonight? Anybody got any other special projects you're working on?
Oh, I've got a bunch of projects, but they're not ready to show yet.
Well, let's don't talk about them. You know? Oh, man. Well, look, we've got, again, Mark here. Mark from Huntsville. We're hoping that Huntsville Hamfest goes this year in August. That is probably one of the finest. We love that Hamfest, man. We love it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I love it. I see that Hamvention is open for business, they say. They've got their thing open for you to reserve your spaces. I think it's going to be, I hope they can make it, but that something that large that Hamvention probably will have to make a go or no-go decision probably into December, maybe, because there's so much involved, from money and logistics and everything. Wouldn't it be terrible, man, have 2 years without Hamvention? I've been going up here 38 consecutive years, and I was last year.
Yeah. Well, if they've got the vaccine out and things start to go, the right way, May is a long way off. That's, 6 months off.
Well,
that's a lot of time.
I don't know, man. Well, I think what we're facing right now is what they faced back in the early days. Back when these epidemics, took millions and millions of people's lives in Europe and places, and they didn't, of course, know what it was or how to handle it. But I think that's exactly what we're seeing in our lifetime now.
Well, I've already been in discussion about doing the BalloonSat forum for Dayton. So they are making plans as if it's going to go on. So hopefully it will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the only other thing I'm worried about, if it does go on, I really honestly feel that the attendance might be 50%.
It's got to be down, I think. There's
instead of 30,000 to attend, I bet you it's 15. I mean, it's just so close to now, and there's so many people that if you look at it too, everybody, nearly 80% of all the hams that go up there are old codgers. They're even older than me.
Hey.
They're older than me, and I bet you a lot of them probably would not go, even if I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're having our club here is having a tailgate, parking lot ham fest this weekend, and I'm not going. Not with the way everything. I mean, the governor here, just issued the, they didn't lock anything down, but it's you really don't want to gather in groups and do stuff. Stay at home if at all possible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, I'm not going nowhere for a while.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, like you were saying, I think the first few ham fests, once, you know, things start to go the right way, they get a vaccine and they start getting a handle on all of this, there's going to be a lot of people being extra cautious with the first few.
Well, I can just see some of the news channels mid next year, you know, announce 500,000 people died this week. It was all traced back to a ham fest.
Well, 3 people sneeze and there's 25 COVID cases.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they don't have a handle on the statistics, and they're making a lot of this stuff up because they're just skewing the data everywhere. I think if they really got to the real data and reported it correctly, like you're seeing in the chat room, a 99.7% survival rate.
Yeah.
How does this compare to the flu that kills so many people every winter? But we're getting politics. We don't need to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But, you know, my hope is that the ham fests, you know, probably Dayton will probably be one of the first that'll really be open comfortably. I think by the time Huntsville comes back around, it'll all be pretty much back to normal.
By the way, Tom, I just Googled rhombic antenna,
hmm?
and it came back with all kinds of pictures and diagrams, and it says the king of antennas.
Oh, really? The king, huh?
The king.
All right, now you got me having to Google it. But,
Let's see.
yep. Quick, everybody run to Google and see what a rhombic antenna is.
Let's see.
And then it's going to show up in your news feeds on Twitter and Facebook,
Oh,
like that, for
dear.
the next 3 months.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, I'll try to dig up my spherical antenna pictures for you guys. I'm looking here on Google to see if there's anything out there. I don't see anything yet. But it doesn't have a focal point like a parabolic does, and its focal point moves different places.
Going to be one of those things I'll have to play with eventually.
Yeah.
Hey, I like Mark, my good friend Mark, K9SCX in Macomb, Illinois, just posted in the chat room. Maybe it'd be a good idea to offer COVID vaccine shots at the Hamfest.
Well, that might be a little late, though. What, you know, I don't know.
That's a good idea.
So what was that, Bill?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Have one of the booths there offering vaccine shots.
Yeah, but it'd be, you know, you need the round of 2 for it to be effective. So
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
won't
yeah.
buy you a whole lot.
Well,
Did you hear? What is it? The Pfizer one has to be kept at 100 degrees below zero
yeah, I
in
saw
storage.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait a minute. How are they going to warm that up to get it in your arm? You know,
Well,
they're going to inject you with a block of ice?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
Hey, when
Lord.
it goes in, boy, it's going to feel awful cold, but you know,
Oh, that's how you're going to get freezer burn.
yeah. you might get freezer burn. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, think about that. I mean, getting it from 100 degrees below to something that your body can tolerate, the shock alone, you know, good Lord, I'll pass. But, you know, it's, you know, this whole thing is, you know, it's going to force a whole lot of changes in the public event world. I mean, the cat shows, they're actually holding cat shows, but they're no longer open to the public, and you know, they're down to the point of almost requiring proof of, you know, a COVID test before you even go in the show hall.
Yeah.
So
Mark, Mark N4BCD just had a nice statement on there. He said, the nice thing about if Hamfestion goes on, all of us will have accrued enough vacation time we can spend a whole week up there.
Actually, I'm running out of vacation time. I'm still on hiatus or whatever, layoff, whatever the heck you want to call it. They're still signing my paycheck, but I guarantee you, I've been told today that maybe we'll have an answer by the 1st of January. So they're still signing my paycheck, so I'm not too worried about it, but I'll have 0 vacation time for the next 5 years. But yeah, a lot of folks will have vacation time.
Unfortunately, I got to lose it or I use it or lose it. So I'm off the end of the year here.
Hey, just some fun stuff. I was trying to find that picture that I had of my spherical antenna, and I found just some old stuff here. Hey, let me show it here. Look at here, guys.
God, it is old. He's got it on paper.
Look at here, man. Archie's a ham radio. It's a comic book. Archie ham radio comic book. Anybody seen these?
Yeah, I remember that.
Look at this. Look at there. It's all about ham radio. That's Archie. And on the back, they have the Morse code there for you to learn it. Okay, let's see what else I got here. Oh, hey. Back in the early 70s, 60s, I had several repeaters up over in my hometown. And we had to have some type of control system, so we had a phone line put in. And we also used the phone line for a phone patch. Well, we didn't want to list the phone number in the phone book. So if you wanted an unlisted number, then it cost more money. They charged you extra. Mm-hmm. So we made up a name. I had a friend that helped me. His name was Sam, and I'm Tom. So I want you to look at this. You guys can see T.S. Zorkel. See T.S. Zorkel right there? That's Tom and Sam. And what we did, listen to this. There was a Zirkel in the phone book, in the Memphis phone book. And we wanted to be the last name in the phone book, so we picked Zorkel. So we just used the initials T.S. Zorkel and had the phone listed. All right, T.S. Zorkel. Now, I had a mustache back then. Now, here's the deal. This is a shopping guide that the local grocery stores would send out every month. And they would randomly pick a name out of the phone book. And if you saw it, you would win $5. All right. You'd win $5. All right. So they picked, when I ordered a phone line, I talked to the lady on the phone. I said, yeah, I'd like to order the phone. And she said, how would you like it listed? I said, well, let's make it T.S. Zorkel. Now, I didn't tell her my name was Tom. I didn't say my friend was Sam. And she said, very smart lady, she says, is that T as in Tom, S as in Sam? And I go, yeah. So anyway, T.S. Zorkel's name was picked out of the phone book. And they put your picture, we're trying to keep this low key so nobody knows about this phone number. We made up a name. Now we're in a paper, and they got to put your picture in a paper. And I tell the guy, I said, look, I really don't want my name listed in the phone. He said, well, look, you're public information, and you are in the phone book. And I said, yeah, okay. Anyway, T.S. Zorkel, so that's a good one. There's a picture of a couple of my buddies on top of the water tank. We're putting up a Phelps Dodge 2-meter antenna there. And Phelps Dodge antenna, the Super Station Master, is a pretty big antenna. It's about 22 feet long. It's fiberglass, probably about 4 inches in diameter at the bottom. That was 1980 right there. Oh, look at here, man. Look at here. Oh, man, this is an old paper here. It was coal. Dayton Hamvention right there. Look at that table, man. This was, my paper's tearing up.
That had to be back when they held it in April.
This was, yeah. This was, this was in a paper in April 28th of 1981. And there we are. There we are, standing out there trying to get cold. I remember when we were so cold some years that we'd put newspaper in our clothes just to try to keep us warm.
Hey, Tom, I think I bought that boat anchor in that photo.
You think so? Yeah. You think so? Let's see. Let's see. What else did I pull out here when I was looking for that picture? I got some cool stuff here. So T.S. Zorkel, we got $5 to put in the kitty right there for our repeater. You know. Let's see.
The in the Oakland, California phone book, where I had my number listed years ago, the very last. Of course, you have to look to see who's the last person, and the last name was Zandor Z Zizikov with two ZY.
Yeah.
And then the next year, somebody decided to beat him, and he put Johnny Zapp, ZZZAP.
Yeah. Here's a picture. We took the antenna down off the water tank, and that's the top of a Super Station Master. We think that looked a little charred, but you can see just the top of the antenna is pretty good size there. And we put new hard line up and pull it up, and there was some of the crew right there that went up that day, going up the tank. All the water tanks over there were 150 feet. It gave us great coverage over there.
You remember when the hamvention was held in the at the end of April?
Yeah.
One particularly cold, nasty day out in the flea market, my brother mentioned to me that I bet it'll snow today. And I said to him, I don't think it's ever snowed on the Dayton hamvention since they began.
Well, it snowed that day.
And I said, I'll bet you $20 it won't snow, because I don't think it's ever snowed at the Dayton hamvention in the 50 years it's been held. And so he said, I'll take you up on that deal.
Yeah.
So we parted ways and ended up on opposite sides of the flea market, with 20,000 hams out there. About 10 minutes later, after I made that bet, big snowflakes came down and started covering all the tents and the people. And he found me within about 3 minutes out of all those people with his hand out. I had to pony $20.
I'll tell you, and back when it was in April, and they moved it from April to May. I think the reason was to try to get a little better weather. Because let me tell you, and you guys probably remember this like I do, that weekend, you would have to carry a boatload of clothes with you. You'd carry shorts, you'd carry long pants, you'd carry insulated underwear, you'd carry rain suits, you'd carry everything with you, boots, because I guarantee you, while you were up there that weekend, it would snow, sleet, rain, flood, sunburn, all in the same weekend, man. All in the same weekend.
That's right.
And we had fun, man. I have seen people would set their tarps, their tents up. I have watched these tents be picked up by air and go 2 aisles over and land. I mean,
I've seen that. I was just going to say that. I've seen that happen. These big whirligigs of wind just comes through and just takes everybody out.
Well, and they used to, the hamvention always said, we're going to charge you $50 per hole if you make a hole in the asphalt. Well, the asphalt wasn't great out there at Hara, but we tried different techniques. We had some long nails about that long. We'd drive down in there. We'd usually go to Lowe's and buy sandbags when we got up there. And after we kind of set our tent up, we'd go to Lowe's and we'd probably buy 10 or 12 bags of sand and to hold the tent down. And then at the end of the show, my buddy next to us in the booth, he always took the sand. He used it for sandblasting. And after about 10 years, he had a whole barn full of sand. Yeah.
Hey, Tom, what year did you start coming to the Dayton hamvention and doing your streaming video? Because I remember the first year or two when you did that, and that was all the big rage, and we go out and we call our friends up and said, in 5 minutes, check out W5KUB streaming video, and we'd run to the camera and wave.
Yeah, we used to have a lot of people. It was kind of amusing. We have a lot of people that would just stand in front of the camera and with their phone. I don't know how far cell phones go back, but we didn't start streaming Hamvention until probably about 18 years ago. We moved inside about 5 or 6 years ago, and that was one of the best things we did to move inside. But it's been about 18 or 19 years, I guess. So that would have put it about 2002, maybe something like that. All right, guys, we have filled 2 hours. If you're listening out there in WBCQ, send us an email, tom@w5kub.com, tom@w5kub.com. This show's been about ham radio. We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email. Thank you. All right, and thanks to everybody that has joined us tonight and stuck around to the end. It was a long show tonight. And it was good to hit 2 hours tonight because our audio version on WBCQ is a 2-hour show. So at least we filled the 2 hours up tonight. 73 to everybody out there. Thanks a lot. Again, if you're new in the chat room, say hi to me. I'd like to know if you're new out there. We'll see you later. We'll have something planned for you next week. And watch the balloon, and also join the Facebook group. It's called W5KUB. W5KUB. 1,100 ham radio operators and shortwave listeners and balloon enthusiasts have all joined in. Bill, we've had a lot of people probably that just interested in the balloon. I know the last balloon we flew, we had about 300 people joined us within a day or two.
And I'll mention those that want to listen for the balloon tomorrow morning, just the standard 14.095.6 megahertz upper sideband, and you can run the free program WSJT-X and whisper mode, and you'll be able to copy Tom's balloon. It'll just be W5KUB, and then it's transferred to APRS-FI through a Python script to W5KUB-22 if you want to see where it is on the APRS maps. But it should be in good range for good coverage of the United States to listen on. It'll be a nice, easy whisper target.
Okay, good night, everybody. 73 to everybody. We'll close the show with Glenn here. Let's see. Let me put Glenn on. Yeah, here's Glenn Popel. Here he is.
So you're saying I can ask this cat any question?
The cat is connected.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
You're the man!